Okay, good afternoon. I guess we'll get started now. And welcome to our 10th annual Zoom meeting, which happens to be this month of May, which is also our 61st anniversary and our annual meeting. So welcome. Just quickly, a few housekeeping rules. We want to, let's see, I put the wrong guy in there. Hold on. Okay, I'm getting everybody up there, but I seem to have lost the speaker, the thing at the top, Brenda. Anyway, there we go. So first of all, I'd ask everybody to mute themselves. It'd be nice if you keep your pictures on, unless you want to get up and roam around or something. If you have questions after our speaker, or we'll ask her maybe during, however she wants to run that, we'd ask you to raise your hand via the participant section or chat room, and we'll work through that. So next, I'd like to introduce Ted Jones, who's going to give us our words of inspiration. Ted?
Okay, Joe. Father, on this beautiful May afternoon, please bless today's meeting of the squires and guide our discussions. Enlighten our minds in every decision that we make. Give us your grace that we may effectively do our part as public servants to improve the world around us. Bless the members and friends that are suffering illness or the loss of loved ones during this COVID pandemic. Bless our members as we strive to return to a more normal life. All these we ask in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Ted. There we are.
Ask whoever the next one is to raise their hand.
So I'm going to call upon Jim Prevost.
Here.
Hi, Jim. To introduce your guest today.
Certainly. I have nominated John Fink to join our group. John, I met through the New London Barn. John is the president of the barn. And when I joined the board in November, John and I met. We had some mutual acquaintances around the lake. John's been around the lake for many years. And I will let John do his bio read, since he knows it a lot better than I do.
You don't have a copy of it, do you, Jim?
Yeah, I think I sent it, but I'll forward it to you.
Well, maybe if you prefer, I'd prefer if you'd read it on behalf of him.
Okay, so here we go.
Is that okay?
Okay with me.
Okay.
So John is a 40-year Lake Sunapee resident. 10 years ago, he and his wife bought a new year-round home on Main Street in New London. After his daughter spent 5 years as a summer intern at New London Barn Playhouse, Tom DeMille asked John to join the board of the barn. John is currently the president of the barn, which, as you may have recently heard, is in the midst of expanding the Main Street campus quite significantly. First time in 89 years. John holds a master's from Columbia University and Middlebury College, and recently spent 3 summers at Oxford University as a graduate student. Fun place. He has had a varied career in public service, education, humanitarian aid, environmental stewardship, journalism, and philanthropy. He has served on the boards of Bank Street College of Education in New York and several nonprofit organizations. Along the way, he was a muskox farmer in Alaska, which has to be a great story, a canoe guide in the Adirondacks, and a writer for the Asian Wall Street Journal based in Bangkok. He's the father of 2 adult children, Kyle and Catherine, and has been married to Eve Burton, Chief Legal Officer of Hearst Corporation, for 34 years.
Thank you, Jim.
Welcome.
John, would you like to say hello?
Yes, greetings to the squires. It's an honor to join your midst. I especially want to thank Bill Helm for kindly selling us his house, 8 or 9 years ago. And every day, Bill, we think about you and Tina and the many wonderful improvements you've made to the house. And we feel quite in debt for you for the beauty you created on Main Street. At your last meeting, you heard from Keith Coughlin, our managing artistic director, at the barn. So you know what I do. If you've driven past Main Street recently, you've seen the construction underway for our first major improvements in 89 years. The barn this summer will be performing at Colby Sawyer College every night starting on June 29th. So if you've had your vaccine and you haven't lost your mask, do come over and join us. We'll be performing from the end of June through early September, just about every single night. It's our attempt to bring some culture and entertainment back to New London and the Lake Sunapee area after a long, dark year of hibernation. I don't have any coyotes in my backyard, but there are a lot of turkeys. So I'm looking forward to learning about from our speaker, the habits and nature of the eastern coyote. So thank you for welcoming me. I look forward to meeting you all in person when the time comes.
Well, thank you, John, and welcome as Jim's guest. Yeah, just a comment on the flu shots. Well, actually, I think I'm going to call on Paul Etgein to give us an update on the both the status of the well, actually, the status of Forbes Tavern and any comments you might like to make about where we stand in the COVID, Paul.
Well, thank you. And I'll start with where we stand in the COVID. This may not be news to you, but the cases are declining overall. Hospitalizations and deaths are also declining. Unfortunately, our rate of vaccination is also slowing down. I think we're increasingly dealing with the hesitant and the unwilling at this point. The good news, more good news, the Pfizer vaccine has been approved for an emergency use authorization for the preteens through teens, 12 to 17 years of age. Hopefully over the summer, we'll make some serious progress in immunizing this age group. I know that there'll be a lot of pressure to immunize them prior to school beginning in September. I don't know how many schools will, or school systems will make this mandatory, or if it'll be your own decision or your parents' decision. We may see some new recommendations regarding masks. Certainly masks out of doors has had some revisions, and masks indoors, I think we're going to be seeing some revisions with that. And now this is my opinion, and strictly my opinion in terms of the tavern. If all continues to go well, I really think we'll be able to return to in-person by perhaps August, maybe more likely September. So with that, yeah, and again, that's not definitive and it's not my decision, but that's, I think that, again, if all it continues to go in the right direction. So we have two wild cards. First is the emergence of a new variant that current vaccines do not protect against. The longer we have folks who are unimmunized or not completely immunized, the higher this risk continues to be. Second, again, my opinion, I think that some places are opening up too much too soon. This may increase the risk of transmission. More cases may result in that variant that we all fear, or more cases may spur a renewal of restrictions, in which case, you know, we that August or September opinion goes out the window. So with that, Joe, I turn it back to you.
Well, thanks, Paul. I have a couple of questions. Does Forbes Tavern, are the other two rooms open
Yes, they
other
are.
than the Draper Room?
The Draper Room, the Tavern, and the Hearth Room are now all open.
Oh, good. And how many folks can they handle in the Draper Room right now?
That's a good question. I would imagine somewhere around 50 or so.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if the state has relaxed its restrictions on, I think it's relaxed its restrictions and it says, go 100% capacity. Um, the other thing is beyond, certainly beyond our ability to affect. And it is a serious issue for not only Draper, but also for all of the businesses in the Upper Valley. And that is, can they find the help necessary to, and frankly, what I do know is that it's not easy. Um, the other thing to think about, and again, this is strictly speculation on my part, if help is to be found, seasonal help, it's more likely to be in the summer. But if we start looking at September and October, um, the college students, the people usually around for summer help are back in school. So it's just another, I suppose it's another wild card.
okay, well, thank you very much. Yeah, I hope that we can get back. I was shooting for August, but September, whatever, we do want to get back as soon as possible, as soon as they can accommodate.
I would urge that you get in touch with folks at the tavern. I'm sure you have already,
Yeah,
but just stay in touch with them and just they know I presume they know what you're looking for,
yeah,
and maybe give a call every few weeks and just say any updates.
okay.
Okay.
All right, well, thanks an
Thank you.
awful lot. Thank you.
Okay.
I guess now, so this being our annual meeting, it's the time of year that we also vote on our slate of officers. So at this point in time, I'm going to ask Art if you would propose the nominations. Art?
Okay, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. We're pleased to report that we offered nominations to 10 people and everyone accepted. Also, they are all in their current positions and renewing for a second year. So that gives us continuity and experience if elected. So these are the nominations. The election will follow. Joe Watts for president, Gary Keene for vice president, Bill Helm for secretary, John Bellis for treasurer, Jim Lyons for assistant treasurer, Peter Rucci and Mark Friedman as co-chairs of the membership committee, Morris Edwards and myself, Art Rosen, as co-chairs of the program committee, and Tom Noel as webmaster. So to you, Joe, for the election.
Thank you, Art. Well, I guess the only way, the most probable way we should do this is by everybody raise their hand, I guess, if they're in favor. I don't know, we can all say aye, but maybe just raise their hand. It looks like everybody's on board. Well, thank you. See if I can muddle through another year of this Zoom business, but thank you, and thank you, Art. And so now, with that, I'd like to reintroduce Art once again to introduce our speaker for today.
Okay, Joe. Our speaker, Chris Schadler, was recommended originally by Harvey Best, a past president of Squires, who attended one of her talks. I was very impressed. We had her originally scheduled last year, but we canceled that meeting because of COVID. So we're very pleased to have her with us today. Chris has devoted much of her professional career to the study of canids, a new word for me, which is wolves and coyotes and others in that family. And she's become quite an expert in the migration of coyotes and one of their foremost advocates. If you've ever heard coyotes howling at night and wondering what was going on, you're about to hear about it. So Chris, you're very welcome and you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Art. So, hello, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to your 61st anniversary. That's lovely. So, all right, I'm going to try to share my screen here. So hopefully it's sharing. Can you all see a slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so what I would prefer is if you have questions, if you can hold them to the end of the talk. It's not going to be a very long talk, maybe a half an hour. And so in order to fit everything that I normally have to say, which usually takes about an hour, down into a half hour, there's some stuff I had to leave out. So, so you most likely will have questions at the end. I hope so. So I am a co-founder of a group called the New Hampshire Wildlife Coalition. John Harrigan, whose name you may know, he's an outdoor writer of some fame in New Hampshire. He and I co-founded the Wildlife Coalition in an attempt to put together a group of hunters, farmers, ecologists. I think there's an architect in there somewhere, who all have an interest in wildlife and who all believe that wildlife, decisions about wildlife should be made in a little bit broader, with a little bit broader view. And so one of our missions is to get more members of the general public onto the Fish and Game Commission. That is a very hard haul. Because the commission has been the way it is since the 1930s. And that is a group of folks who set seasons on wildlife and who are hunters and trappers and fishers. And the public who may not hunt or trap or fish is largely left out of the conversation. So we'd like to broaden that. And we're also interested in advocating for predators, which are right now in New Hampshire in a bad way. Populations of all predators are on the decline, except for coyotes. And there's a very good reason why coyotes will rarely go into decline. And hopefully by the end of this talk, you will understand and be able to explain in a short paragraph of 10 sentences or so why that is. I also represent Project Coyote, which is a national organization that is interested in promoting predators in general, the coyote specifically. And let's see, I can't remember how I'm beginning this. I wanted you to know that for a very important part of my life, 18 years actually of my life, I was a sheep farmer. And as a sheep farmer, I had border collies that I was trying to train, but I had an alternative goal, and that was to see if I could raise my sheep, lambs, year after year after year, in an area that I knew had a lot of coyote predation, specifically on sheep. I bought the farm specifically because coyotes had preyed on the guy's sheep before I got there. So I knew the coyotes had a taste for sheep. And I thought, what a perfect opportunity to see if I could figure out how to coexist with the coyotes without having to kill them, because dead coyotes learn nothing. So it was 18 years of trying to figure out how to learn how to live with coyotes. And I normally go into that in this talk, but I've cut it out of this talk. So if any of you have any interest in that, I would love to talk about it. So can all of you see the writing here on the slide? Is
Yes.
that clear for folks? Great. So Eastern coyotes have sort of wormed their way into the position of being a top predator in New Hampshire. And all of you probably know that coyotes only arrived here in the 1940s. The first coyote trapped in New Hampshire was trapped in Holderness in 1944. And then by the 1960s, they had become a little bit more prolific on the landscape. And today, the estimate from Fish and Game is that there may be 5,000 of them living in our state. They estimate over in Maine, maybe 12 to 15,000 over there. Vermont, same as us, 5 to 6,000 animals. Is this a sustainable number of coyotes? Well, it may or may not be. It may be that a sustainable number of coyotes may actually be fewer. And as a former sheep farmer, I certainly was advocating on the side of fewer coyotes on the landscape, basically because people were extremely worried by them, needlessly so, but worried by them nonetheless. And until people became educated, I wanted to see coyotes, stabilize at a lower number. But due to the way that they are managed, they keep reproducing pretty quickly, actually. As a member of the ecosystem now, however, it has an important place, and they accomplish a lot, particularly for forest communities and also for humans, because their primary prey are rodents. And if you know about the white-footed mouse, you know that the white-footed mouse is a vector for Lyme disease. And so animals such as coyotes and fox, which primarily prey on rodents, become an important part of the ecosystem as far as humans should be concerned. Lyme's is devastating. The wolf was here for tens of thousands of years, actually, maybe two different kinds of wolves. The wolf that is currently an eastern wolf up in Ontario, and also the gray wolf. There were no coyotes here until 1944. The coyotes could not come in until wolves were extirpated, and they were by 1900. Coyotes are a maligned creature, and yet they are our native song dog. Wolves are not native to North America. They didn't evolve here. Wolves evolved in Europe and in the higher elevations of Eastern Europe, Russia, and so on. And wolves are a holarctic animal. They are located in all countries surrounding the Arctic. Coyotes evolved on the plains and prairies of North America. And so it is truly our dog, but it is the most persecuted carnivore in North America. And all of these various ways of killing them are employed. Thankfully, out here, we do not blow up dens. We do not hunt them from airplanes. We do not use snares in this state, which is excellent. But here they're hunted, trapped, they're poisoned, they're baited, and they're hounded. And throughout North America, we know that at least 500,000 of them are killed every year. So, why the antipathy toward this animal? Well, because this animal that we have here in the East, called the Eastern coyote, which is a little bit different than the Western coyote, is part wolf. And so it represents, in my view, more wild, more wilderness-oriented kind of animal, even though it's habituated itself perfectly to living with us. So here I've shown a picture of a Western coyote and one of an Eastern. You can see that the Western coyote is much lighter, 25 to 35 pounds. Our coyotes here begin at about 35 pounds, and the largest coyote ever taken weighed in at 62 pounds. Some of our coyotes can look really, really big. And I'm going to show you a picture of the biggest coyote I've ever seen. And I'll explain why it's as big as it is, but documented wise, 62 pounds. Out west, they call them prairie wolves or the American jackal. Here, east of the Mississippi, and only east of the Mississippi, we call them eastern coyotes or coy wolves. I don't call them coy wolves, by the way. A friend of mine does. Some people do. It's not my preference. Out west, they congregate in sort of loose packs of unrelated, possibly individuals, or they move across the landscape as singletons. Here, depending upon the season, we'll see them on their own, or they might move in packs of 3 or 4 in the late summer. Out west, you can see the color of the fur is light, but they can also be very dark or reddish or gray. And out here, it's the same. And out in the west, they're omnivores and scavengers. And here, they do that, plus they take deer. The fact that our coyotes have wolf DNA in them allows them to operate as a family unit in a pack, which is a wolf-like trait. And it also, in a very short span of time, in 60 or 70 years, they have been able to actually coordinate to hunt deer, which is a very sort of advanced behavioral mechanism. But coyotes learned really quickly. Eastern coyotes, which is what we have, are, this is how they're made up: 0 to 10% dog, 8 to 30% wolf, and primarily 60 to 70% Western coyote. So my preference of calling them Eastern coyotes is because I think it's a special name that really connotes maybe some dog, definitely some wolf, and a lot of coyote. So let's look at the wolf that gave rise to our coyote. Here you have the eastern wolf, which is located up in Ontario, specifically in Algonquin Provincial Park. If you were to go to Niagara Falls and go straight north about 4 hours perhaps into Ontario, and then veer to the east, you would come to Algonquin Provincial Park, which is the oldest provincial park in Canada. It is the home of the eastern wolf, a very small wolf. This wolf is 60 to 80 pounds. And this wolf has a tendency to like to breed with coyotes, which I think shows its excellent taste, actually. But, that's what we know about eastern wolves. This eastern coyote that you're seeing in this slide looks almost more wolfy than the eastern wolf, which this eastern wolf looks a lot like many coyotes I've seen on our landscape. And so the eastern wolves are part coyote and eastern coyote are part wolf. From the coyote, our eastern coyote has inherited these traits down below: incredibly adaptive, a rapid reproducer, and as a result of that, a rapid evolver. And so, in 100 years, the eastern coyote migrated from the plains in the west into the east, settled in, had interbred with the eastern wolf, began to live in family units, operate as packs, and now have learned to take deer. It is a remarkable, rapid journey they've taken. And then from the wolf, you can see that it inherits other traits like a much larger size and the ability to live in packs. So I'll go into this a little bit more. What is interesting right now, what is happening up in Canada right now, is massive hybridization between red wolves or eastern wolves. It's a very similar animal, red wolves and eastern wolves. Eastern wolves really are a kind of red wolf, but I don't want to get into the genetics right now. So we're finding that eastern wolves are breeding with gray wolves to create the Great Lakes gray wolf. The Great Lakes gray wolf therefore has coyote in it, gray wolf, and eastern wolf. Eastern wolves are also breeding with eastern coyotes to make an animal that is truly unique, which is our eastern coyote. The question is, why are these wild species interbreeding? It's not because they can't find their own kin, because up in Ontario and Quebec, there are gray wolves with whom gray wolves could breed. And eastern wolves have migrated a bit outside of the park into various parts of Ontario. So eastern wolves can find other eastern wolves with whom to mate, but they're doing a lot of swapping. And so the advantage of hybridizing, of course, is that just like with our mutts, you know how mutts tend to have a healthier life. They have a greater resistance to disease, that kind of thing. Well, there could be that advantage for wild species to interbreed with one another. They also could be interbreeding with one another because a lot is changing on the landscape as a result of human activity. So that may be upsetting the cart a bit. But what we do know through mitochondrial DNA is that this hybridization has been going on for a long time. It's very interesting. I wanted to show you how the skulls of eastern coyotes compare to western coyotes. I mentioned western coyotes are a good deal smaller, 25 to 35 pound animals, as opposed to our 35 to 62 pound animals. Look, for example, here at the jaw of the eastern coyote compared to the jaw of the western. And look also at the occipital crest here in the eastern coyote. Jaw muscles are attached up at that occipital crest. And so the heftier the occipital crest, the heftier the jaw, the greater the power of that jaw. And so you can see in 100 years this evolution and how our eastern coyote is really fitting itself out to be a deer hunter. So why do we have coyotes? What happened on the landscape that made it possible for coyotes, which have always just lived out west, to suddenly appear in the east? Well, habitat change. You can see that in 1620, we had a lot of original forest on the landscape. Then that forest began to get cleared and cleared and cleared for farmland, for development, for burning wood to make coal. There were many, many reasons why the forests were cleared. And by 1926, most of the original forest in the Northeast was gone. The impact on wildlife, of course, was severe. There are certain animals that make their living only in original forests: caribou, wolf, giant beaver, cougar, wolverine. And as that forest vanished, with habitat vanishing, predators became very vulnerable to hunting. And so it's a combination of hunting wolves, and other predators, as well as vanishing habitat that wound up with the year 1900 being the year that here in the Northeast, we no longer had a top predator. Once those predators were removed, the coyote could move in. So changes in the land, habitat loss, species loss. We lose the wolf and other predators. We end up gaining the coyote. And the coyote, on its way east, mated with the eastern wolf, bringing wolf DNA back into the Northeast. Ironically, in an animal like the coyote that we will never be able to extirpate, ever. Out west, they've been trying to get rid completely of coyotes for 100 years. And all it has done is encourage coyotes to breed faster. So by 1900, these animals were removed from the landscape here. Beaver, gone. Gray wolves, cougar, lynx, wolverine, which we had here. Can you imagine? I've heard many of you, you're hunting boar and you're hunting all sorts of different things out there. Can you imagine being out there with wolverine? That would be astonishing, I think. And black bear, our black bear population by 1900 had been reduced to maybe 80 to 100 animals. Now, you probably know that as of the spring of this year, the estimate from Fish and Game was that we had about 6,000 black bear on the landscape. As a result of the last 100 years or so, showing a tremendous improvement in our understanding of how to manage forests, animals have come back. So we brought beaver back twice, once from Canada, once from Pennsylvania. Maybe there might have been a reintroduction as well from Virginia to get beaver back into the landscape. Gray wolves and eastern wolves keep trying to come back because the dinner table is set with all the deer we have, but they look so much like coyotes, they keep getting killed. Cougar, yes, they're cougar out there, right? We know that. Lynx are trying to come back. There's a few of them up north. Wolverine won't come back because there's not enough contiguous old landscape left in New England to support wolverine, and of course bear. So, you know, humans have exerted all of this pressure on the landscape. And as a result, wildlife populations that were in stasis 150 years ago, 200 years ago, you know, predator populations crashed as the habitat vanished. And now with better forest management, we've got animals coming back. So while all of this habitat change is going on out here, here's the little western Wile E. Coyote, 25 to 30 pounds. Look how narrow its muzzle is, by the way. Little guy, really cute little guy. Their natural range was here, west of the Mississippi. By 1900, you can see that their population is exploding. Why would that be? The understanding people have of this is with constant hunting, it encourages rapid reproduction on the part of coyotes. That's some evidence of it. Also, when white folks moved out west, we tried to remove all the bison. You probably are aware of this story. And most of the bison that were killed were left on the prairie. And as a scavenger, coyote populations benefited from all that free food. And when female mammals have great nutrition, it is expressed in very large litters. So that helped on this boom too. And look at their current distribution here. All the way down now through Central America into South America. In the last 2 years, coyotes have been spotted down there. Now, I want to make a point here that all this while, from the time that white people ventured across the Mississippi, we have been killing coyotes recreationally, mostly because people don't really eat coyotes. We've been killing them to keep sheep safe. We've been killing them because we're scared of them. I mean, you name it. There's many reasons, I guess, why people kill them. But in the face of that, these animals have flourished. And that should inform how we manage this animal. So I want to show you what the journey of coyotes looked like moving across the country from probably 1870 or so up till the time of colonization in the Northeast. And you can see that some of these arrows are green, some of them are black. We need another black one down here. Imagine the landscape has changed in the East. Coyotes now can move into the East because predators have been removed. They move as a kind of a wall. And so all the animals represented by black arrows are Western coyotes, obviously, that moved into the East and didn't benefit from interbreeding with wolves. So they stayed small. Okay, everybody got this? Nod if you get it. Oh, good, thank you. And the animals that naturally took the northern route, the green route up here, those are the animals that just by random chance, when they got into Ontario, bumped into the eastern wolf and gave birth to essentially the eastern coyote. This is what the coyote expansion looked like from 1900 across the eastern states and up into southern Canada. Really an incredible journey. And I want to make the point here. Many people think that because the coyote is not native to the eastern seaboard, that it is therefore an invasive species. It is not. It is an animal that is native to North America. And as a result of human activity, we opened up an opportunity for it to come in. And so it did. I told you that eastern coyotes live in APP, Algonquin Provincial Park. And there was a study done by John Benson about 10 years ago or so on the eastern wolves in the park and how they interact with both gray wolf and coyote on the western side of the park. And you can see that there's interbreeding going on. Here is an eastern coyote combination of eastern wolf and coyote. Over here, where the eastern wolves went a little bit northward, they met up with the gray wolf and interbred there. What I want to say very briefly here is that those eastern coyotes that are half eastern, those eastern coyotes that are half eastern wolf and half coyote, some of them look like this animal. This is a shot of an animal, of an eastern coyote taken outside of Algonquin Park in Ontario. Just an astonishing combination of wolf and coyote. Now, as those eastern wolves that are half and half, as they move south into Vermont, south into New Hampshire, and east and south into Maine, as they move downward and begin to interbreed with one another, each individual will have respectively less wolf and less wolf in the mix. And so the animals get smaller the farther south they go. In terms of their life cycle, they are able to largely control their own population by the biological mechanics that they have inherited. Excuse me. Sorry. They only mate one time during the course of a year, January to March. During January to March, the female will come into heat for 1 week. Period. End of story. That is the only week during the entire year that she is capable of mating. The male coyotes, during the same period of time, have viable sperm. The rest of the year, amazingly, they do not have very viable sperm. So they can't breed with any other coyotes, nor can those male coyotes or females breed with our dogs. You might ask, can coyotes and dogs interbreed? They can, but there cannot be a coy dog population out there. And if somebody would remind me to explain why later, I'll tell you. So so come January to March, the female will come into heat at some point, maybe in the beginning of January, maybe at the end of March. If she has a mate, he will be following her closely, waiting until the time where she is receptive. They mate. 63 days later, she gives birth to a litter of pups. So if she mates with her mate in January, January, February, March, she'll dig out a den on territory and give birth to the litter there. If she doesn't mate with her mate until March, it'll be June before she's digging a den. Somewhere between March and April, they select a den site. April to May, possibly June, they give birth. Now the pups are in the den. The pups have right around here in Sunapee. I live in Webster. So our coyotes around here are primarily in the den. That has been primarily what has kept them quiet at night. When there are pups in the den, they are quiet. And then in the next week or so, those pups are going to begin coming out of the den. I have to show you this. The pups are going to begin coming out of the den. They are the cutest darn things ever. And they have these high, shrieky voices. Somebody once said they sound like Janis Joplin and somebody on a steel guitar twanging away. It's really, really a high sound. So in a normal pack, the male and female will breed. They'll give birth to a litter of pups. The pups, they're in the den. The female is in the den with the pups now. Her mate is feeding her. If there's any leftover yearlings from last year, they are near the den and they will defend the den, which I'll talk about in a minute. There's a very high mortality rate on pups. They die, 50 to 75% of them won't make it to their first birthday. So the average litter size is 4 to 6 pups. And so of those 4 to 6, maybe 1, possibly 2 will make it to their first birthday. Why? They get mange or parvovirus or distemper. They get hit by cars. They get hunted. They get trapped. Or worse yet, they run into a porcupine. And every now and again, somebody will take a picture of a coyote passing through a backyard that has gotten into a porcupine. And it's a miserable thing. It's a terrible starvation way to die. Only the mom and dad in a pack breed. They are the only ones to breed. And mom, if any of her yearlings attempt to breed with a male from somewhere else, she will she will try to stop the breeding. And if the female gets away with the breeding and digs a den on territory, she has been known to go into the den and destroy the entire litter. Now, why would she do that? Why would the dominant female destroy the litter of her own daughter? Well, because a territory that these guys have, which may be 3 to 4 square kilometers, has all the food that a pack needs to survive. If there are too many mouths to feed, everybody is going to get hurt by that. And so the female somehow intuits that and will prohibit any of her youngsters, as long as she's alive, she will prohibit their breeding. If they want to breed, they have to become a disperser. So dispersers generally leave the pack in the fall and seek a mate. And you can see here, some of these dispersers have traveled 500 miles to find a mate. In January, the female will have blood in her urine. This is a picture I took out back on the Blackwater River. I was so excited to see it. And then soon enough, the male and female begin moving around, and you can follow them. You can track them in the snow and watch how they play with one another, and it's pretty cool. And then 63 days later, the pups are born, deaf and blind, just like all dogs. during this time, right now, this is the only time that coyotes become aggressive with us, because we don't know exactly where their territories are. They can dig a den anywhere on their territory. It could be right next to a trail that you walk all the time. It could be right next to your favorite hunting place, although you're not going to be hunting now. Are you? No. And so because we are unaware of where their dens are, we can be walking in the woods with a dog. Usually it happens with the dog when suddenly we're faced with a snarling coyote with, hackles raised, making terrible sounds and standing right in your way. And if this should ever happen to you, I want you to remember this slide and what I'm saying. There's a den nearby that this coyote is defending. And all you need to do is back off. Talk very softly, move off. The coyote will probably follow you until you have moved sufficiently far enough away from the den to not represent a threat. So any other time of the year, you shouldn't even see coyotes in the woods. If you do see coyotes in the late summer or the fall or the dead of winter, if they're on the path in front of you, just be big and be loud and just stand there and they'll move away. If they don't, give me a call. So late denning behavior, pups are coming out of the den. Soon they'll be moved to a different area of the territory. This is a little guy, seven weeks old, just coming out of the den to explore his area. And this is a pack of coyotes I was invited over to Portsmouth to watch. This was behind a horse barn. They were eating the rodents. And the guy that owned the horse barn just loved this. He said it happens every spring, a pack of coyotes den nearby. When the pups come out of the den, they're all in the field hunting rodents, and they're still relying on the adult. This is the mother. They're still relying on the adult for some regurgitated food. So this is a pup soliciting food from mom. And this is what that looks like up close. The pup will come up to the mother or any adult and nibble at the lips or lick them in the face. And it stimulates a response in the adult coyote to regurgitate food that it has just eaten. Whatever food that coyote has just eaten is going to inform that pup of what its food should taste like. And this is critical. When I had my sheep farm, I knew approximately when the coyotes that I was living with, I knew approximately when they were in the den because things got real quiet, and when they were going to come out and when they were going to be feeding their own pups. And of course, that was the danger time for my lambs. So I managed intensively. In 18 years, I never killed a coyote. In 18 years, I never lost a lamb. But for the first 4 years, I had to work hard at it. Anyway, this pup is stimulating her. She's going to puke. The pup is going to learn what its natural food is. And here is the male of this pack bringing home a raccoon that it's caught. I love seeing coyotes behaving themselves. I love seeing them, with a deer leg in their mouth, at pup feeding time, because they will transmit to the pup what is their natural prey. What do coyotes eat? This is stuff that I have found in their scat. So I've been going through coyote scat for about 25 years, and I have picked out most of this stuff, lots of rodents, apples and other fruit seasonally, scavenge stuff in the winter, in the spring. Bunnies, fawn make up an important part of the young diet of coyote pups. About 18% of their diet is fawn, which sounds like an awful lot. But in fact, it's only 18% of the coyote's diet. Bear take many, many more fawn than do coyotes. And what takes the most amount of fawn are tractors. So you know that fawn bed down in fields. And when people come through early in May and, and cut the grass, they're putting at great risk the fawns that are laying down in that grass. Anyway, fawn, insects, weasels, woodchuck, coyotes eat fish, even catfish. Ha 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 ha. Little joke there. All sorts of fruit. I have pulled aluminum foil out of coyote scat. Of course, lots of rodents, even salamander and amphibian stuff. I've seen cat fur in their scat. Sneakers, banana peels. You have to be pretty hungry. So you can see that there's almost nothing that coyotes won't eat. The thing that's missing here are humans. We are not on their menu. They do not look at us as potential prey. I would say, in all honesty, when I had my sheep farm and I knew those coyotes during lambing season were out there waiting for me to make a mistake, my kids were young. And so I had a double fence around my backyard. One of those fences was an electronet fence that I kept on the outside, and the indoor fence was a 5-foot tall wire fence. Because with young kids, you've got to be really careful, just like with small dogs. Our coyotes are territorial. So a territory has all the food, water, den sites, and cover that one pack needs to survive. They defend their territory. They are also monogamous creatures. So a male and female mate for life. And so the fact that they're territorial and they're monogamous kind of support one another, those two traits. Interestingly, down in Rhode Island, a woman researcher attached a GPS collar on a male and female coyote in a pack and kept track of them while they were hunting to feed their pups once the pups were out of the den. So coyote pups spend 6 to 8 weeks drinking mother's milk. Once 6 to 8 weeks is over, the pups are out of the den and the adults hunt to feed them. You can see here how faithful the female and the male coyote, their mom and dad, how faithful they were to their territory. They recognize their territory. They depend on it for all the food that they have. So if coyotes can regulate their own population, how is this population of coyotes constantly growing as a result? I told you that they respond to being hunted by producing more coyotes. So here's how this works. If there's a pack of coyotes, there's 6 individuals in a pack, somebody comes in and shoots 2 coyotes or maybe 3. The 3 coyotes that are left have an advantage because now all of the food in that territory is theirs. The females then that are left, if there are females left, those females with better nutrition, instead of giving birth to 4 to 6 pups, they're going to give birth to 8 or 10 or possibly 12, like they do on the Cape. So these huge litters get born. And like I say, half to 75% of these pups are going to die before their first birthday. But that still leaves more coyotes on the landscape, more coyotes in that territory. So hunting coyotes is not the way to control them. We also allow killing contests in our state. And I am sorry to show you this picture, but this is one of hundreds of pictures that get posted from people that participate in contests where you get a prize for killing the largest or the smallest coyote. I guess this guy is going to win a prize for killing a pup. They can win AR-15 rifles and other outdoor stuff, and they're encouraging children to participate in these contests where coyotes are killed for no reason other than to win cash or some kind of prize. The coyotes then are carted off in something that looks like this and dumped in the woods. And sometimes I'll be out there and I'll come upon 3 or 4 coyotes that have been dumped. So one of the things that the New Hampshire Wildlife Coalition is trying to do is end these killing contests. It hurts the reputation of hunters. You know, on our steering committee, we have 4 hunters who are incensed with this kind of thing, because most hunters eat what they kill. And this is just, you know, a waste of wildlife. And then finally, howling. People want to know why they howl. They howl because they're very social animals. They like to be with one another. Once those pups are out of the den, they can be a little bit hard to control. And so they tend to wander off, and they tend then to get lost. And then a singleton coyote will howl. You must have heard this, I'm sure. They howl, and then hopefully they get a response from the rest of the crowd, the 2 or 3 or 4 pack members that are within hearing distance. So a singleton howls, "Where are you?" The pack responds, "We're over here." And then you might hear that back and forth a couple of times. You also, if you're lucky, might hear an entire pack howl answered by another entire pack. And that's what really scares the pants off people, because most people don't understand that our coyotes here are territorial. They will defend their territory. And one way of defending territory is by howling. If you've got 4 or 5 coyotes, 4 or 5 coyotes can easily sound like 10, because they can ululate. One coyote can easily sound like a couple of them, because they can warble and howl and yip and yike and squeak and make all sorts of noises. And the pack over there is in the same situation. There might be 4 or 5 animals at their most at the end of the summer over there, and they need to sound as ferocious as this other pack. So they'll howl back and forth in the night. And the night is just filled with the sound of coyotes howling. And people, you know, it sounds like there's about 800 of them out there. And my own sister, whose name I shall not mention, called me one morning very early, and she said, "There's coyotes howling out in the woods. Do they know how to open my screen door on their own?" And, no, they don't. Not to worry. They're smart. When I was doing my research up north, I captured this guy more than once, a youngster, maybe 5 months old, who would come right in front of my trail cam and just sit there and howl. And of course, I could hear him howling. I could hear the pack answering back. So to finalize here, the way that we manage the coyotes, we can hunt coyotes here 365 days a year. They don't get any break when they're breeding. They don't get any break when they're denning. It's the only mammal that doesn't get a break when it's bringing up their young. We can hunt them at night from January to March, which is their breeding season. And why? Why hunt them? We're not eating them. We hunt them because some people truly believe that if we didn't hunt them, they would get out of control. But it is exactly what hunting does to the pack, which is upset the balance in the pack, that results in larger litters. And New Hampshire Fish and Game biologists agree with what I'm saying. I've presented this to them, but there's a lot of pressure from certain hunters to continue offering the opportunity to target shoot at coyotes, have these killing contests, just treat the animal like vermin, when in fact, it plays a useful role in the ecosystem, which Fish and Game also agrees with. So I'll leave you with this picture of this animal that is really an astonishing looking coyote. It's quite large for our coyotes. It's probably about 45 pounds. I want you to look at the size of its muzzle. It's a pretty good sized muzzle. The set of its eyes is very wolf-like. Its ears are very coyote-like. Its tail is coyote-like. But if you saw this creature, what would you think you had seen? And so I want to leave you with just this one notion that there are not wolves out there. We don't have wolves in Vermont or New Hampshire or in most of Maine. In the very northern part of Maine, up near the Canadian border, yes, every now and again, they get gray wolves up there, not eastern wolves, but grays. But down here, what we have are coyotes. And they are a nation unto themselves. They have virtually no interest in us unless we habituate them. If we are luring them into our backyards with dog food in order to get great pictures of them, they can easily become habituated to us. One of you said that you don't have coyotes in your backyard. Well, that would be unusual if you didn't. And it's very cool that you have turkeys, and the turkeys are probably scaring the coyotes off, to tell you the truth. But every single one of us lives within the territory of a pack of coyotes. That is for absolute sure. Whether you live in downtown Sunapee or in the middle of, the wilds of New Hampshire, you are within the territory of a pack of coyotes. And think about how infrequently you see them. So they want to coexist. I hope that this talk has inspired you also to coexist. So I think I'm at the end of this talk. Oh, I thought you might want to know that coyotes and red fox, people want to know if they hunt red fox. Coyotes will kill red fox if they can get them. So red fox have learned to live. Oh my goodness. Coyotes have learned to live. Red foxes have learned to live between coyote territories, and red foxes have also learned that it's a lot safer for them to live as close to us as they can possibly get. So if you're seeing more red fox in your neighborhood, more red fox on your farm, it's because coyotes are pushing them in. Okay, now I'm truly done.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. That was very informative and interesting. I have heard the comment about coy dogs a lot. A lot of natives around here say coy dogs. I said, I don't know if there's any such thing, but at least there is some element of truth to that.
Well, coyotes and dogs can breed, and they produce a litter of pups, and those litter of pups are part dog, part coyote. And the issue with those animals is that they're twice as likely to affiliate with people as coyotes are. So they get in trouble with people. And then they only have the instinct to hunt that coyotes do. So they usually die by starvation. But if they live long enough to be able to breed, they come into their breeding season in October or November rather than in January. And so the population of coy dogs can't really persist as coy dogs.
Interesting. Are there any other questions for Chris today?
Paul?
Chris, thank you very much. What's the usual size of a pack?
Good question. So by December or January, the size of the pack has gone down to mom and dad, if they have survived, and then maybe a yearling or two. So maybe in the dead of winter, you might have 3 or possibly 4 animals left over. And then mom and dad breed, give birth in the spring, and then in the spring, you might have 4 to 6 pups. So you add those 4 to 6 pups with the adults that survive. And then once those pups are out of the den, they get in a lot of trouble. And so, swinging through the summer, that's when their population is probably the highest locally, because the pups are out learning their territory and figuring life out. And the yearlings are out there as well as mom and dad. They don't, Paul, they don't travel as a pack though. They, in the winter time, during mating season, the male and female are cheek by jowl, for the obvious reason, you know how guys are, but then once the pups are out of the den, all of the coyotes are out on the landscape as singletons looking for food to feed those pups.
I have a
Chris,
question.
we have a question from Duncan Wood. Why have coyotes not limited the expansion of deer?
Why have they not limited?
Right.
Well, that's an interesting question. Usually people want to know if coyotes are hurting the deer herd, which they absolutely are not. Coyotes are not real adept yet at taking a healthy deer. They'll take fawns, and in the wintertime, if a deer gets out on ice, they can take a deer under those circumstances. Or during the hunting season, if somebody wounds a deer and doesn't get it right away, coyotes can take a deer that way. But I think that for the most part, 60% of the coyote's diet is made up of rodents. And then they eat fruit and vegetables and everything else. So being a scavenger and a generalist, they have not made a dent yet in the deer herd. For a forester, we have a forester on our steering committee, and he has been reporting terrible damage in the forests over in Stoddard from deer, where they just have, it seems, thousands of deer that are eating young trees and that kind of thing. So it's a real good question. My best answer is what I said, that deer right now are not an important part of their diet. However, I want to caveat that 2 years ago up in Canada, somebody actually witnessed a pack of eastern coyotes taking down a moose. And that must have been an astonishing thing. It was not a moose carrying a lot of winter tick. It looked like a perfectly healthy moose. So if the eastern coyotes, which are larger in Canada, if they can take moose, I think it's only a matter of time before eastern coyotes can have more of an impact on the deer herd. But for right now, no.
Question? Chris?
Yes.
When one of the alpha couple dies,
Yeah.
how does the group adjust?
Okay, that's a real good question, Art. So there are people out there that like to get a trophy, and will go after a male coyote, some of which are really pretty big. Usually it's the largest male, but not always. That's the dominant male. If he is removed, she will leave the pack and go in search of a mate when it comes time to breed. Here's the danger. When she leaves the pack, it frees up all of the youngsters to breed when breeding season comes around, because she is the enforcer. So, it's a critical time when that happens. But of course, inevitably, these animals die. Coyotes live on average 4 years in the wild, 4. And the reason for that is basically pup mortality. When you average the lifespan of a coyote in the wild, the old ones are 12 years old. And so if you average all the pup mortality with the most long-lived coyotes, you come up with a lifespan of, on average, 4 years. So, these guys are dying all the time like that.
Well, whoops, John?
John?
Yes, Chris, thank you so much for your wonderful talk. You mentioned that in your many years as a sheep farmer, you never lost a single sheep or lamb to coyotes. And I wondered if you could share with us how you protected your sheep while living amongst eastern coyotes.
So the short version of this is, at the time I had 5 dogs. I always have 5 dogs. What am I talking about? I always have 5 dogs. And every day I would take my dogs around my farm and they would pee and poop and mark territory. Simple thing to do. I checked my fences twice a day to make sure that nobody was digging or anything like that. I brought my sheep in every single night, no matter how beautiful the night. And when those ewes dropped their lambs, they did it in the barn. And those lambs didn't see the light of day until they were at least 3 weeks of age. And then I stayed with them until they were really capable. I was a presence. And I did other things as well. I hung odds and ends on my fences, because that's upsetting to coyotes to have change. Sometimes I put a chair on the other side of the fence. I did all sorts of things just to keep them guessing. And I also had my dog kennel right attached to the back of the barn. So if anything came up to the barn, the dogs would bark and I'd come roaring out of there, and et cetera, et cetera. And I was younger then. And I could literally, if I saw a coyote up next to the fence, I would just jump over the fence and chase the coyote until it didn't turn around anymore. I can't do that now. And thankfully, I gave up sheep farming before I got too decrepit. But something interesting happened, though, John. After 4 years of me being a management maniac, I knew that a whole new generation of coyotes had been born in that territory without the benefit of any lamb. And I also knew that those coyotes I was living with were defending our territory against other coyotes. And so I never had problems with coyotes after 4 years.
Fascinating.
Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, Chris. That's been a very informative and interesting presentation. So thanks again.
Well, thank you, Joe. And if any of you have coyote problems, or if any of you know a group that would want a talk, please contact me. Both Art and Joe know how to do that. And my email is nhcoyotes@gmail.com. So thank you very much for being here and for staying awake, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
At this time, I'd like to call on Morris Edwards, please, to give us a overview of our next month's speaker. Morris?
Thanks, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. Next month, our speaker will be John Ferris, who you may know has moved to Pennsylvania, but with the magic of Zoom, will be joining us to talk about how to deal with China, a superpower that is growing very rapidly economically, politically, and militarily, and increasingly adopting a very aggressive stance. John has spent a significant amount of his working life in China, and he continues to follow developments there. So I know that his presentation will not only be interesting, but very well informed. on this vital issue. And I hope you can join us.
Thanks a lot. I know I'm certainly looking forward to it, and I'm going to highly recommend it, Morris. So thanks a lot. Unless there's any other, is there any other new business that needs to be brought up at this point? If not, I recommend we adjourn and have a good rest of the day. And I'm hoping you've all been fully vaccinated.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you all.
Thank you.